first moved to Pine Hollow, I wasn't looking for trouble. I just wanted silence. After years of city chaos, failed relationships, and the kind of burnout that leaves you hollow, the idea of a small Oregon lakeside town sounded like salvation. Pine Hollow was postcard perfect. Dense evergreens, mirror-still water, the smell of cedar and pine drifting through the air. The kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and neighbors waved whether they knew you or not. I rented a small cabin by the lake's edge, modest but cozy, and thought maybe finally I could rebuild. My nearest neighbor was an older man named Caleb Wren, who lived about 100 yards up the gravel road. He was friendly in that distant small-town way, polite nods, the occasional evening ma'am. Sometimes, when the fog rolled in thick over the lake, I'd see his lantern glowing faintly through the trees. We didn't talk much at first, but I liked knowing someone else was nearby. Out here, isolation can creep in faster than you realize. I settled into a routine: morning coffee on the porch, working remotely during the day, evening walks by the shoreline. But around the second week, things started to feel off. It began with the noises. At night, I'd hear faint rustling by the lake. Not the normal kind, the occasional animal or wind brushing through branches, but deliberate movement. Crunching gravel, soft footsteps pacing just beyond the edge of the porch light. The first few times I brushed it off as deer. Then one night I heard something that made me sit bolt upright in bed. A low, drawn-out whistle. 3 notes repeating. When I mentioned it to Caleb the next morning, he gave me a strange look. "You heard that too?" he asked. I nodded. "Been hearing it off and on for weeks," he said. "Usually comes from the woods behind the lake. Thought it might be kids playing tricks." Then after a pause, "But it never sounds like it's moving away." I tried to ignore it, but the whistling continued, always between midnight and 1 a.m. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. One night I sat on the porch with a flashlight waiting. The air was still, the lake smooth as glass. Then from somewhere near the tree line, that same whistle. I shone the light toward the sound, but there was nothing, just mist shifting between the trees. A few seconds later, I heard the crunch of gravel. Close, very close. I turned off the flashlight and stayed completely still. The sound stopped. The woods went silent again, heavy and watchful. After that night, I started locking every door and window, something most locals didn't bother with. 2 days later, I didn't see Caleb. His truck stayed parked in the same spot. His porch light burned through the night, but no sign of him. I told myself he'd gone into town or was visiting family. But when another day passed with no movement, I decided to check on him. His front door was unlocked. I called his name as I stepped inside. The house smelled like stale coffee and sawdust. His mug was still half full on the table. The living room clock had stopped at 12:17. I searched each room, calling out, but he was gone. In the back room, something caught my attention. A small tape recorder sitting on a cluttered desk beside a stack of old cassettes labeled by date. The most recent one read August 13th. I pressed play. Static crackled, followed by Caleb's voice, rough and low. "He's back," he said. "Third night in a row. Watching the lake again. I followed the sound last time, saw him near the dock. Thought it was just someone fishing, but he wasn't moving right, like he was trying to mimic walking." The tape hissed for a few seconds before cutting off. I took the cassette and left, locking the door behind me even though it didn't matter anymore. When I reported it to the sheriff's office, they filed it as a missing person but didn't seem too alarmed. "Probably just took off into the woods," the deputy said. "Happens all the time up here. People wander off to clear their heads." Still, they searched for him. For days, deputies combed the woods with dogs. They dragged the lake. Nothing. No footprints, no clothes, no trace at all. It was as if he'd vanished into the mist. That night, unable to sleep, I replayed the tape again. At first, it was the same. Caleb's voice, static. But near the end, I heard something new I hadn't noticed before. A faint noise behind his words. A whistle. 3 notes repeating. Over the next week, I started noticing things in my own recordings. My phone's voice memos, my laptop mic, even random background noises during work calls. All with that same pattern, that same distant whistling tone. I convinced myself it was paranoia, that I was just hearing things. Then came the knocking. It was around midnight when I heard it. 3 soft taps on the door. My stomach dropped. I didn't move. After a few seconds, it came again, louder. I grabbed my phone and opened the camera app, recording as I approached the door. Through the peephole, I saw nothing but fog. The knocking stopped. I checked the video afterward, hoping to see something, anything that would make sense. But all I saw was the empty porch. Then, as the clip ended, I realized the audio picked up something faint. From outside near the lake, 3 low whistles. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I decided to leave Pine Hollow for good. I packed up what I could, planning to head back to Portland. But before leaving, I walked down to the lake one last time. The fog was thicker than usual, swallowing the opposite shore. My shoes sank into the damp soil as I approached the old wooden dock. The boards creaked under my weight. That's when I saw it. Something glimmering in the shallow water. A reflection. I leaned closer and froze. It wasn't my reflection. It was Caleb's. Pale, unmoving, eyes open and blank beneath the surface. But when I gasped and stepped back, the image rippled and vanished. The water was still again, as if nothing had been there. I ran back to the cabin, shaking. I grabbed my phone and played the last voicemail Caleb had left me weeks earlier. His voice came through, static-filled but clear. "If you hear it," he said, "don't whistle back." I left Pine Hollow that same hour. 2 months later, I got a call from the sheriff's office. They'd found something on the far side of the lake. A small wooden shack half sunk into the mud. Inside were tools, a lantern, and several cassettes, all labeled with dates after Caleb's disappearance. The latest was from September 22nd, 5 weeks after he'd gone missing. The sheriff read me part of the transcript over the phone. He comes closer now. Doesn't whistle anymore, just stands by the water. Last night he called my name. Sounded just like me. That was the final recording. I moved across the country after that, deleted every recording from my devices, even changed my number. But sometimes when I sit near an open window at night, I hear it faintly in the distance. 3 notes, soft and deliberate, and the worst part? It always sounds like it's coming from the lake. I never wanted to live in that building. It was old, cramped, and smelled faintly of mildew no matter how many air fresheners I plugged in. But when you're broke, newly single, and desperate for a place to land, your standards shift fast. Apartment 9 was what I could afford. Small 1-bedroom, 2nd floor of a worn-out complex downtown. The manager, a jittery guy named Len, handed me the keys with a nervous laugh and said, "Don't mind the plumbing, it's an old building." Pipes groan like ghosts sometimes. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. The first few weeks were fine. Uneventful, even. The place had thin walls so I could hear muffled TV shows. The neighbor's dog barking, footsteps in the hallway at all hours. I got used to it. It became background noise, part of the rhythm of the building. But then something changed. It started with the smell. At first, I thought it was just the trash chute again. The whole complex had issues with it backing up. But this smell was different. Richer, heavier, the kind that sticks to your clothes and lingers in your throat. It came from the floor vents, faintly at first, then stronger every day. I'd light candles, spray air freshener, even leave windows open through the night, but nothing helped. It just kept getting worse. I mentioned it to Len, who promised to have maintenance take a look. Days passed. No one came. Meanwhile, the smell got so strong it made me gag when I entered the apartment. I started sleeping at my sister's place across town, only returning in daylight to grab clothes or check the mail. Still, every time I opened that door, it hit me like a wall. Sour, metallic, unmistakably wrong. Around that same time, the building's water pressure began dropping. Faucets would spit air before running, and sometimes brownish water poured out first. I called Len again. He brushed it off. "Old pipes," he said. "Happens when the system settles." But one night I came home to find my bathroom sink overflowing with murky water, reeking like rot. The maintenance guy, Jerry, showed up the next morning with a toolbox and a forced smile. "Probably a clog in the main line," he said. He twisted the pipes beneath the sink, grimacing at the sludge that oozed out. Could be something dead in the vents. Happens with rats sometimes. That was supposed to be reassuring, I guess. It wasn't. Later that week, I ran into Jerry again in the stairwell. He looked uneasy, like he hadn't slept. "You said you're in apartment 9, right?" I nodded. He hesitated. "If you smell it again, stronger, don't try to clean it yourself. Just call me." That night I dreamed of water dripping, slow, rhythmic echoing in the dark. When I woke up, it wasn't a dream. I could hear it. A steady drip coming from inside the wall behind my bed. By morning, a dark stain had spread across the paint. Circular, damp, the edges tinged brown. I pressed my hand against it. The wall felt soft, warm. That was when I called Jerry again, panicked this time. He arrived 20 minutes later, toolbox in hand but face pale. He barely spoke as he set up his light and started cutting into the drywall. The smell that burst out of that wall was like nothing I've ever experienced. Jerry gagged immediately, stumbling back, hand over his mouth. I had to step out into the hallway to breathe. When I returned, he was crouched by the opening, flashlight trembling in his hand. "Call the police," he said quietly. Behind the wall, stuffed between insulation and old pipes, was a human body, or what was left of one. The cops came fast after that, the building filled with flashing lights and murmuring tenants in bathrobes. I watched from the hallway as they taped off my apartment, officers moving in and out with latex gloves and flashlights. One of them asked me when I first noticed the smell. I told him weeks ago. His eyebrows lifted slightly. "You've been sleeping in there this whole time?" I didn't answer. They removed the remains late that night. I didn't see the body itself, thank God, but I saw the stretcher bag. The shape inside was small, human, but shrunken. The detectives told me they'd need to question everyone in the building. Standard procedure. I didn't mind. I wanted answers too. The idea that someone had been inside my walls, decomposing inches away from where I slept, made my skin crawl. Detective Ramos was the one assigned to my case. He was calm, methodical, the kind of man who carried a quiet weight in his eyes. "We'll run prints, dental records," he said. Could take a while. A few days later he called me. "We've got an ID," he said. "Name's James Nolan." I didn't recognize it. "He lived in your building," Ramos continued. "Unit 9B, right below you." I froze. That apartment had been empty since before I moved in. I'd seen the "for rent" sign on the door every day. "He lived there?" I asked. "Until about 6 months ago," Ramos said. "Neighbors reported him missing in March, never found him." My stomach turned. "So, he's been in the wall, yes," he finished quietly. "A long time. The official report said he was murdered, the cause of death blunt force trauma. No signs of forced entry in his old unit. No suspects." The part that haunted me most wasn't the violence, it was the logistics. How does a man die and end up sealed inside the wall of another apartment without anyone noticing? 2 days later, a team came to remove sections of drywall for evidence. I didn't stay to watch. I moved into my sister's guest room until the investigation wrapped up. When I finally went back to collect my things, the hole in the wall was covered with a temporary board. The apartment was cold, stripped of its smell, but not its atmosphere. I felt watched. As I packed, I noticed something on the floor near the wall, a small black USB drive half buried in dust. I pocketed it without thinking. That night, I plugged it into my laptop. There was only one file, 915 footage.mp4. My heart sank. I clicked play. The video was dark, grainy. It showed the interior of what looked like a narrow crawl space. The camera was shaky, breathing audible. Someone, presumably James, was holding the device. His whisper came through faintly. "I can hear them through the vents again." He turned the camera toward a vent grill. A faint voice echoed from beyond it, distorted and hollow. I couldn't make out words, but it sounded like whispering. James moved closer, pressing his ear against the vent. The whispering grew louder. Then suddenly from behind him, a loud metallic clang. He spun the camera around, and for a split second I saw something, someone in the darkness. A pale face too close to the lens. The feed cut off. I replayed the clip over and over, trying to freeze the frame where the face appeared. It wasn't clear, but it looked eerily familiar, like someone I might have seen around the building. I took the USB to Detective Ramos the next day. He watched the video twice in silence, then looked up at me with a strange expression. "Where did you find this?" he asked. "In my apartment," I said. "On the floor by the wall." He nodded slowly. "This footage was recorded in your unit." I stared at him. "That's impossible. I wasn't even living there." He turned the laptop around. "Check the timestamp. March 2nd, that's the week Nolan disappeared." I didn't know what to say. The idea that this man, this murdered man, had been crawling through my walls, recording in what would later be my apartment, chilled me to the bone. Ramos promised to follow up, but weeks went by with no updates. Eventually, I stopped hearing from him altogether. I moved out of Pine Hollow apartment soon after, found a new place across town, tried to forget. But forgetting doesn't come easy when you've lived next to death. 3 months later, I got an email from an unknown address. The subject line read, "Found another one." Attached was a short video file. Against my better judgment, I opened it. The footage showed the same wall in apartment 9, but this time it was freshly painted, repaired. The camera panned slowly until it faced the floor vent. From the darkness inside, a whisper rose. "Still here?" The video ended. I called the police immediately, forwarding the clip. When they arrived at the old building, apartment 9 was once again sealed off. The new tenant, a young college student, hadn't reported anything unusual except weird sounds in the walls. They searched but found nothing. Detective Ramos called me later that week. "We checked the timestamps on both videos," he said. "The one you got by email, it was uploaded from a public Wi-Fi near your old address. But there's more. The reflection on the screen? We enhanced it." He paused. "It's you." I hung up before he could say more. I never responded to another message, never went near that building again. But sometimes, late at night, my phone buzzes with notifications. Emails with no subject line, no sender. Just attachments. I delete them all without opening. But every time I do, I swear I can hear a faint whisper from somewhere behind the wall. And I know it's not the pipes. I've always been fascinated by unsolved cases. Not in the morbid, true crime junkie way most people are, but in a deeper, obsessive sense. The missing, the unexplained, the ones that just stop. No trace, no closure. I run a small YouTube channel dedicated to breaking down those mysteries. I analyze public case files, police footage, even live stream evidence. It's not a big channel, maybe 50,000 subscribers, but my audience is loyal. They trust me to find details others miss. The case that ruined everything for me started like any other. It was February 2024, and I was researching the disappearance of Emily Carter, a 27-year-old woman from Ogden, Utah. She vanished after leaving her night shift at a gas station just off the I-84. The last footage anyone saw of her came from a police dash cam, grainy. Late-night recording of her car pulled over on a rural road. The engine was running. Door open, no driver in sight. The responding officer never found her. I thought it'd make for a compelling deep dive. I titled the stream, "The Vanishing of Emily Carter, What the Dash Cam Missed." I went live that Friday night. My setup was simple. A single webcam, mic, dual monitors, and a dim desk lamp that barely lit my face. I had the dash cam footage queued up. The chat filled fast, viewers eager to play detective. We started by analyzing the timestamp, the officer's radio chatter, the flickering streetlight in the frame. Then I noticed something strange at 3 minutes, 17 seconds in, just before the officer steps out of his car. The passenger side mirror catches a reflection, something small and white moving behind the patrol vehicle. It was only visible for a split second, but it didn't look like a person. More like fabric or hair fluttering unnaturally. I slowed it down frame by frame. The chat exploded with theories. Shadow figure. It's just glare. Enhance it. I enhanced it. That was my first mistake. When I brightened the frame, the reflection sharpened just enough to make out the faint outline of a face. It was pale, wide-eyed, almost childlike, and it was smiling. I froze the stream for a second to catch my breath. It had to be a trick of the light, I told myself. Dashcams distort reflections all the time, but the longer I stared, the less it looked like a glitch. Something about that expression, fixed, deliberate, made my skin crawl. The chat begged me to zoom in further. Against my better judgment, I did. That was when the stream cut out. The screen went black for about 20 seconds before the feed returned. My viewers flooded the chat. "Bro, your camera glitched." "What was that sound?" "Someone's behind you." I laughed it off, though my heart was pounding. I rewatched the playback after the stream ended. Just before the screen went black, there was a faint reflection on my window. Something standing behind me. At first, I thought it was just my own movement. But the shape didn't match my posture. It was taller, still, watching. That night, I had trouble sleeping. Every noise in my apartment felt amplified. Pipes groaning, footsteps above me, the hum of the fridge, it all sounded wrong. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A new email. No subject line, no sender. Just a file attachment, dashcam recovered, .move. My curiosity overrode my fear. I opened it. It was the same footage from the case, but longer, like a version that had never been made public. The dashcam caught the officer stepping out of his car, flashlight in hand. He called Emily's name. The beam swung across the dark road, catching the trees. Then something moved behind him, fast, almost too fast to process. A blur of white, human-shaped but twisted. The officer didn't react. The figure passed inches behind him and stopped at the edge of the road. When the light hit it again, it was gone. I closed the laptop and sat in silence. I don't scare easily. I've watched every kind of footage imaginable. Crime scenes, security tapes, paranormal clips, but this felt different. Wrong. Like it wasn't supposed to be seen. The next morning, I checked my analytics. The stream from the night before had exploded, over 400,000 views overnight. Comments poured in. Some people analyzed every frame. Others claimed to see faces, symbols, even voices hidden in the audio. One user wrote, "Watch the reflection at 16:47. It moves even when he's not." I clicked that timestamp. The comment was right. In the reflection on my window behind me, something was shifting frame by frame. A faint silhouette that breathed. I shut down the computer. 2 days later, the file vanished from my hard drive. Not deleted, gone. Like it never existed. I thought about calling the police but stopped. What would I say? A ghost in a dashcam file is stalking me? Instead, I did what I always do. I documented everything. I recorded my thoughts, my observations, anything that might make sense later. Then the noises started. It began with my phone buzzing randomly, notifications from blank numbers. Then tapping at the window, soft, measured like fingers tracing the glass. I installed a motion-activated camera facing the window. The next morning I checked the footage. Nothing. Except at the very end of the clip, the timestamp froze for 3 seconds. And in that still frame, something was pressed against the glass. A pale face. I didn't recognize it at first. Then I realized it was Emily Carter. Her photo had been everywhere during the investigation. The same soft eyes, the same long blonde hair. Except in the footage, her mouth was open wider than humanly possible, as if caught in mid-scream. I unplugged the camera and threw it in the closet. That night, the tapping started again. Over the next few days, things escalated. My viewers began sending me messages. "Your last upload's haunted." I saw her blink. The background keeps changing. I didn't know what they meant until I watched it again. In my older streams, the reflection in my window started showing different locations. Not my apartment, wooded roads, highway signs, police tape. One even showed what looked like the exact gas station Emily had vanished from. Frame by frame, it was as if the background was rewriting itself. I decided to go offline for a while. I needed to breathe, think clearly. But that same night I got another email from an address titled Emily Carter 84. The message was empty except for a single line. "You didn't see it all." Attached was another file. "Last feed, move." Against my better judgment, I opened it. The footage was of me. My own live stream. Same camera angle, same lighting. Except in this version, I wasn't alone. Behind me, standing in the reflection, was Emily. Her face expressionless, eyes locked on the camera. The video ended abruptly with the same sound from the dashcam. A faint, distorted scream fading into static. That was the last straw. I shut down my equipment, wiped my drives, even replaced my laptop. But strange things kept happening. My new computer would power on by itself at night. Files I didn't recognize appeared on my desktop. Folders labeled Replay and Live Capture. When I opened them, they were full of still frames of me, all from different nights, all taken from the same camera angle I used to stream from, except I hadn't streamed in weeks. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe my system was hacked. Maybe a fan or hacker got into my cloud storage. But when I checked my router logs, something impossible appeared. The IP addresses accessing my system weren't external. They were local. Someone or something was inside my network. I called my friend Nathan, a digital forensics guy who sometimes helped me with tech stuff. I showed him everything, the videos, the files, the screenshots. He didn't laugh, didn't call me crazy. He just stared at the monitor for a long time before saying, "Where did you get these?" "I told you. They just started appearing," he exhaled. "These aren't external recordings. The metadata says they were filmed using your webcam, but with a different process ID. It's like something else is using your camera at the same time as you." That night, Nathan called me again, his voice tight with panic. "Don't go near the window," he said. "I rechecked the IP. The signal doesn't trace to your system. It traces to another feed, coming from inside the reflection." I didn't understand what he meant. Before I could ask, the call dropped. I haven't heard from him since. I tried to reach out to the police again, but what would I even report? Every time I rewatched the videos, they looked slightly different. Background shifting, my own face blurring at random points. In one playback, my reflection turned toward the camera while I didn't move. It smiled. A week later, a local news outlet broke a story. Missing YouTubers' footage prompts new clues in Emily Carter case. My name, my channel, plastered across the screen. The anchor said investigators had discovered my last recorded stream on a private server. The final seconds of that stream, the one I don't remember filming, showed me standing by the window, whispering something to the camera. The words were faint but clear enough to make out. She's not missing. She's here. Then the stream ended in static. That was 6 months ago. My channel's still online, though I haven't uploaded since. Every so often a new video appears under my name. Short, distorted clips with no titles. The thumbnails always show the same thing. My desk, my chair, the empty window behind me. Viewers think it's marketing for a horror project. Some call it the Ghost Stream ARG. They don't realize it's real. I moved across the country, new name, new place. No cameras, no windows facing outside, but I still get emails. No subject lines, just attachments. The file names always follow the same pattern. Last feed 01, last feed 2, and so on. I don't open them anymore. But sometimes when my computer screen flickers on by itself, I catch a glimpse of the preview thumbnails. They show me sitting at this same desk.